Welcome to Changing Suits. We're your hosts, Bal
and Taj, discussing the latest news, views, and general life for us Western Asians.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Bal.
And my name's Taj.
Today we've got a very special guest. We've got Gurpreet Singh from Sikh Dad. And today we're going to be discussing his journey on social media, firstly, and his own journey through life and what's brought him where he is now, and really talking about male mental health, which is a subject that we've been really interested in doing a podcast on. So, Gurpreet, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Sure. No. Firstly, thank you guys for having me on. I've been keeping an eye on the podcast, and you've had some amazing guests so far, and I'm privileged to join them as well. So I appreciate you having me on. As you mentioned, in terms of being a parent blogger on Instagram, that's how this kind of journey actually began. I'll try and cut a long story short. I was actually working in the banking industry before I became a parent blogger. I was working in one of the major banks in the city of London. And I started parent blogging because I was a father of two then, now a father of four. But I was becoming quite active, as in I had two daughters then, and I was showing everybody that, you know, I can be a hands-on father. And I started looking around the community and seeing a lot of dads my age doing similar things. So I thought, why not do something? I was looking to do something. I was trying to find my way somewhere to make some difference somewhere. And I thought, why don't I just start blogging about, you know, my journey, my lifestyle experiences, raising my children within faith, you know, tackling some misconceptions that there might be out there. And back then, Instagram was just a place where people put photos and nothing else. There was no stories, there was no nothing. So I started with that intention back then. And to be honest, I started coming across a lot of families where mental health was quite prevalent, where people were being quite transparent on their accounts, and they were sharing what they'd been diagnosed with, for example, anxiety, and they were to the point they were putting up images of like antidepressants, for example, and saying, well, now I'm on this. And I was looking at this on my feed, and I was like, wow, like I didn't even know that this was going on. I had no idea that this existed, that there was these problems out there.
The posts that you were seeing, were they from the South Asian community, or was it just generally?
No, it was not. They were from white men.
Okay.
And yeah, I was very shocked by that. There was even some instances where people had attempted suicide, and I was just reading those you know, stories. I was just shocked by it, because I was like, I'm a father and I've got two children, and this is going on. Like, my family is not different from any other family that this is happening in. And you know, I just started to learn more and more about this, because I realized it was such a big issue, and people started talking to me about it as well. I started getting involved with a few campaigns and things like that.
But what kind of campaigns did you get involved in? Because just now you've just mentioned that obviously those photos which were being put out were from white people.
Yes.
I mean, I've been quite clear in previous podcasts where I'm not great with social media, so I've got a limited knowledge in regards to this. However, were you coming across? You tend to get, if you're Asian, you tend to have a lot of friends that are Asian, so you might see that come up on your Instagram post. Were you finding that it was only white people that were putting these posts up, or were some of your Asian friends putting it up as well?
Not at that stage. So I'm talking about maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And you know, our people were not really talking about it then. It was more, like I said, from the white community, dads, because a lot of bloggers are white dads. There's not many Asian bloggers. There's maybe a handful back then.
And is that why you thought, right, I've got to do this?
Well, I'll be honest with you. When I had the idea, I typed in Sikh Dad, because I thought there must be someone who's called Sikh Dad, and there wasn't. So,
you're like, I'll take that one.
Yeah.
I want to know how your parents took it, because you left this wonderful job to go and blog. What did they say to that?
I left obviously to come into mental health industry, but
Okay.
obviously they were not happy about that in the sense that I left something that I'd worked my whole career for, and was very comfortable with life in the city, bonuses and overtimes and a certain lifestyle. Yes, they were not as excited as I was to follow my passion, basically.
This is a really interesting topic in itself, and I know you've touched on so many things, and I'm like, I want to jump in there and ask him about that. But let's talk about this little bit, because I say it's little, but we've spoken about this, where your parents want you to go down one path, which obviously you went down, but
Yes.
then you've taken a big major turn.
Hmm.
In fact, it's probably even bigger because you were already in a job. So they were like, "Great, we did what we need to do. We got him to do
Finished, done what we
Yeah,
need.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and
That's
then all
right.
of a sudden he's turned around and done a U-turn." Why did you make that decision?
Because, as I said, I was very affected by what I was seeing
Mm.
online. I had an experience which I'll go into probably a little bit later, about experiencing low mood for a few months, and feeling emotionally drained. So I had experienced something myself, so I could put myself in someone else's shoes. And as I said, I was just deeply affected by what I could see, and at that time I had a realization that I was where I was working, and I was thinking to myself, what is it I'm actually doing in my life? I thought I was in my coming up to my mid 30s, and I was like, if I stay here for another 30 years, you know, I'm going to get this painting or whatever. I've been done this amount of service and whatever, whatever it is. But what would I have actually achieved in my life? Like, I thought to myself, I'm working for myself and my family at this point. I'm not doing anything for anybody else. It really dawned on me, um, you know, and I thought I must do something. I must make some difference somewhere. And that's what got me thinking, what can I do? And then I started volunteering locally at Mind, become a mentor, and that come about really quickly as well. It was really kind of blasé, like so fast that happened. And I didn't realize what I was actually doing, to be honest. And then literally after becoming a mentor, 1 month after, there was a job in mental health services, which was employment related, so helping people that have mild to moderate conditions that are accessing therapy, helping them with their work needs, like in work needs, helping to build their career, coaching them, returning off sick, things like this. And I took the job, and I didn't look back after that because I was following my passion. And just a small caveat, I realized when I actually left my job, when I realized that I'm making this choice, a lot of people that work with me, they were like really refreshed by this, because they were like, wow, you're following what you want to do. I don't actually like my job either. I was like, wow.
Oh God, did they follow suit, and did their parents thank you?
This is a conversation I've been having with the kids over the last few days, where we grow up and we think, okay, this is a set path, we need to make money for family, da da da. But it does come to a point, and I think there is, I don't know, I think mid-30s is when all of us sort of have this realization where it's like, actually, it's not all about money. Am I happy? Pretty
Yeah,
much what
yeah.
you've said. And is this where I want to be? Because I can't be doing this for another 30 years. Whatever the pay scale is, I mean, I'm sure being in banking, it was
Yes.
great. Or whether it's further down.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting, I think, yeah, I'm having the same thoughts
I
myself.
think what you just said there, where you said you'd had a conversation with your children, this was really important for me after a while, because when Simma, who's my eldest, so she was around 9, 10 years old at that time, and I thought to myself that I didn't want my children, when they grow up, just looking at me doing a job to pay the bills.
Mm.
I wanted them to see that I'm doing something that I love to do, and that was really important as well.
And is that what you're encouraging your kids to do? What if
Mm.
they wanted to be artists? Would you be okay with that?
I went to university and I didn't know why. I just went to university
Because
because
your
it was a
parents
thing.
told you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's absolutely
Like
right.
most of us, yeah.
And then when I arrived in the workplace, I realized that people had many different routes to get there. And I'm like, well, why did I go down that route for?
And my parents didn't tell us that you didn't have to do it. You could have
Yeah,
done it a different
exactly.
way. Yeah, no, it's true.
Exactly. So I totally agree with you there.
So you said your parents weren't too impressed. And I know we're going into this
Hmm.
subject quite a lot, only because
Hmm.
this is the whole point of this podcast. Where is that cultural difference between our parents and us and our kids? So what
Hmm.
did your parents say to you when you got your job at the job that you wanted? Were they happy for
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
or What did they
Yeah,
say?
they were quite worried actually because obviously it's coming to mental health industry. They were worried that I'm taking on too much, going into something I don't really know about, leaving something secure. And it was my wife who actually said to them, well, even though I wasn't looking at it like this, they were like, well, if you're looking at the mental health industry, it's an industry which is actually elevating at the moment, and
Yeah.
a lot of funding is going into it, and it's growing rapidly. So like this, she said, Mum, if you're looking at it like that, he's probably going into something better now for the
She
future.
was
So she made
selling it to him. I love it.
Good
so
salesperson. I like it.
yeah, yeah. So I didn't have to say too much. Just had to let them see it for itself. The bonus was I was coming to work locally, so like 10 minutes down the road. So that was what I was,
You could come home for your roti, couldn't you, at
exactly.
lunchtime?
Yeah, exactly.
And in the beginning of this podcast, you did actually, I think it was the first thing you said on that point when you had changed your job. Now it sounds like you were more likely to be able to do it all, whereas a high pressure job in London, were you able to do it all?
It's exactly that. It's when you come out of there and you see what life is like, how different it is, the things that you're able to do. I wouldn't have done any of that there because you're just not able to. Everything is dictated for you, and your time is less because you're because that's what other thing I was saying to them is that I'm doing late nights and early starts, and it's traveling in and traveling out. And we used to pick the kids up really late in the evening because both my wives work in Holborn as well. We used to do, so I was saying, look how this is actually working out. Because people were actually saying before, look, how long are you going to keep this up, working this lifestyle?
So you said you've got 4 kids now.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you've got 2 older daughters,
and 2 sons. Yeah,
2 sons. Okay.
yeah.
Now, with and we're in the same situation. We've got the first it was the girls and we've got the boys. With the fact that you've got daughters, do you think that it has impacted the way you look at life, the way the Asian sort of perspective of life as well? Because in the past, obviously, having daughters was seen as a
Yes.
negative thing.
Hmm.
Did you experience that yourself, especially because you had 2 daughters?
When you have one daughter and then you have a second daughter,
Mm.
absolutely. It's kind of like, better luck next time kind of thing. Oh, you've got another one, the same where you're expecting to have a boy, right? At least people are expecting the pressures there. That, it's kind of like, especially it comes more from the elders, really. The elders, when they come round and they see you, it's kind of like, well, better luck next time. And they're female themselves saying it. Like, I'm thinking, what do you value yourself as a woman? But obviously that's just their condition like that. It's not getting away from that. And then all of a sudden, when we had a son, then it's, oh, God is great, yeah.
You wasn't
And
before
it's like,
that, yeah.
and it's like I'll just translate. It was like Rab de Rang Chariya. So the colors of God have been transcended on your family now, and you are super blessed. And I'm thinking, I've been a father for the last 6, 7, 8 years already, and I've had some amazing experiences already. So yeah, there's a massive difference.
And how did that pay on your mental health? How did it impact it? Because
Yeah.
we've got 3 sisters, the three
Yes.
of us, and obviously we experienced a lot of people saying, "Oh my God, you've got 3 girls in your family." How did it impact you as a father?
And your wife as well.
Yeah, I think, do you know what it is? When I had 2 daughters, I was quite like defiant as a father, and I'm like, we weren't expecting to have any more children. We didn't think it was possible because my wife has got PCOS. So we were told she wasn't gonna have any children, put it this way. But we
Wow.
had 2 girls, and then
Mm.
we weren't expecting to have another child. I was satisfied as a father of 2 girls. I was
Yeah.
happy. And then obviously, then we was expecting, and we found out it was going to be a boy. So there was pressure on me because I was thinking to myself, I knew how everyone was going to react. And then I didn't want it to be like, oh, all of a sudden I've got a son now, I'm sorted.
Yeah.
Everything has been completed, and you forget about what's happened. But where it kind of was negative for me was like, I should be celebrating I'm having a son
Yeah.
because a boy is different to a girl, right? I should be celebrating that. But I
Yeah.
felt like if I celebrated it too much, it was like, well, you've had 2 girls and now you've had a son now, eventually
Yeah.
everything's happy now. So I did. And then after a while, I thought to myself, no, I need to celebrate the fact that I have a son, and a boy is different, and da 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 da. These are different experiences.
That is so interesting because I was just about, as you were talking, that is exactly what I was going to say. I mean, you had a third child regardless of a boy or a girl. But the fact that you had those thoughts is it's amazing, isn't it? How did your wife feel in regards to it?
Yeah, it's a similar way. It's different because she grew up in a family of girls, and so did I. So it was strange to have a young boy in the family because we just not don't have boys in there. So it's totally different. It's a new experience.
And it's different when you do the nappy changing. I remember that. I was like,
It's easier.
well, actually, that's true. One thing we really do want to sort of delve into is your job and why you think it's so important for mental health to be spoken about. And we'll in a bit we'll talk about the male mental health side of it as well. So, what's your perspective, firstly, of how mental health is starting to become more talked about, more awareness is being raised? Do you think it's enough, especially in the Asian community, or where do you think more work needs to be done?
I think we could all say that there's not enough, but you have to look at the progress that's been made. Us having this conversation on here is a start. And many other forums where conversations are happening, space has been created for us to speak about these things. Unfortunately, it's come off the back of incidents that we would never have wished. The more and more that happen in the community, the more and more is highlighted and that things need to be done. But where with anything, there's always a spike when something happens and then it goes down again, the interest in it, so to speak. But there's a lot of charities out there doing such amazing work. Online, there's so much information about mental health. There's so many self-help guides these days. There's so much out there now that almost if you feel like a certain way is a lot more easier to find out for yourself. I still think it's very difficult to have conversations with people about how you're feeling. There's a lot of work that needs to be done around that.
Earlier on, when you said about the social media and the fact that you were seeing these posts of antidepressants and things like that.
Yes.
Now, I find it interesting because those are conversations we wouldn't be having face to face, yet people are comfortable enough to put them on social media. Why do you think that is?
The thing is, as well, what I've noticed is that with social media, a lot of us have never met before. I'll put a quote up: "Nobody supports you like a social media friend." Yeah, because there's no judgment there. Because in our inner circles, our inner friends, our inner family, we've all got judgment there. We've all got competition there. Somebody thinks that they've got something to lose. Always, there's a different kind of pressure there. But there's just support from people online that you don't know because there's no invested interest there in terms of you just want to support someone and make sure that they're okay. There's no sort of competition there as such.
I think I'm delving into another direction, but with South Asian men, there's almost like, okay, men shouldn't show their emotions. It's
Yes.
okay for a woman to show her emotions. Why is that? Why are we like that as a community? As we see men, if they show their emotions, it's almost like being weak.
Because we've never been allowed to show them from a young age. Never. This is a problem that we've had. Ever since we were young, we were told that the common one is that the boy falls over, right, and gets up and must dust himself down and show no emotion. Whereas if the girl falls down, she's okay to cry and it's okay to put your arm around her and say, "Don't worry about it." Whereas our emotions have been suppressed from the beginning. Whereas in a playground or growing up, when we show the emotion, we are a girl, right? We are called that. We are called various other things. The typical one was obviously man up and all these things, right? So therefore, I've never been comfortable growing up being able to show emotion because it's never been allowed. It's always been, you're going to be ridiculed, you're going to be whatever it is. It's never been safe to say, "Hang on a minute, this is going on with me, this is what I'm feeling." Everything is internalized, then it intensifies because there's no outlet, there's no one you can speak to. Maybe you can speak one-on-one with someone you feel comfortable with, but in a group of men, there's no way that anyone can just put their hand up and say, "Look, this is what I'm feeling now," because they're scared. because it's totally alien to us. It's coming out of a comfort zone to be able to do that. We're scared of a response that we're going to get or what we're going to be told.
Also, I've seen even in funerals, you'll see that men don't generally cry. It's the women that are bawling our eyes out. But if we see a man that cries, there will be conversations afterwards. Oh, did you see so and so was crying?
Yes.
And that's sad that even at such an emotional time, men feel like they need to stay strong.
Yeah. As you mentioned that, there's probably two occasions generally where men are okay to be emotional. I know you said that there's probably an aftermath to that, but sport and death, yeah? Sport, we can mask our emotions because when we get happy, right? When the result goes our way. But when things go bad for us in terms of sport, we're able to mask our feelings in there. We can hide that, because it's okay to be down because your team lost, or whatever happened. And then death, yes, obviously we're not allowed to cry too much. But, as you said, if someone did say, oh, so-and-so was crying there, it would kind of be left there, right? There wouldn't be an aftermath to it. No one would be accountable. You wouldn't be saying, well, what, you need to do this, because people would understand that a death has happened. So in those two instances, that's probably the only time we are able to be emotional.
That's really interesting that you said about sports. I'd never thought about that. And that's, as you were saying it, I was seeing images of people in football. Why do you think sports is the exception?
Because, you're passionate about your team. You're expected, when they're happy, you're expected when they win to be happy. And when they lose, you're allowed to be sad because you're amongst many people who are sad, right? If you go to a stadium, right, and you lose, people can say expletives. They can, show their frustration. They can be like, head in hands, because you may have followed your team so far and then they didn't go the final hurdle, and then you can be disappointed. Everybody's disappointed, right? So whatever you're feeling, even if it's not even related to that, you might have been sad already when you got there, but you can mask it, and then no one's going to say anything to you and say, why are you sad for? Because your team just lost.
Yeah, that's amazing. Me and Bal are smiling from ear to ear because we're like, oh my God, we didn't realise that.
The penny just dropped there. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and I must admit, that's what happens with my husband. He's a big Liverpool supporter, watches every football game of any type. And you're right. And now thinking about it, you do have the highs and the lows, and it's all to do with the game.
So he's always crying then, is he?
I don't know if you want to be saying that, Bal.
He's got no reason to be sad at the moment.
I don't follow the football, so I haven't. So in regards to this, we keep coming back to it, do you think there's a difference between Asians and white people?
There is a difference, but do you know what it is? When we say, South Asian community men, there's a problem there, right? There's no doubt about that. But there's also a problem with the white man as well. For example, you're talking about everyone's going out for a drink. For example, who's going to be the one that's going to lower the tone and say, I'm not feeling great today, and misery around, everyone's having a good time. It's not easy to do that, right? And then I've spoken to African sisters who talk about African men and say there's so many mental health issues there, but they're not allowed to show anything. There's a lot of things going on in that community where African men are so strong. They've got strong positions in their churches and everything like that. They never show anything, but there's clearly issues there. So it's everywhere. And obviously South Asian men, obviously, because, as I explained a bit about, growing up emotion wise, not able to show emotions. But then obviously when you're saying to someone, look, I'm feeling like this, then traditionally, obviously it was, well, you need to get a job, or, you need to, go on holiday, or you need to get married, or you need to buy a new house, or you need to buy a new car, or you need to, there's always, it's always suppressed. It's never dealt with, or these things don't exist because the community, we can't say that you've got depression because what's so and so going to say, and all of these things, this holding status, holding face and everything. But as I said, when we talk about these things, I totally appreciate talking about mental health, talking about suicide, talking about all these things. It's very difficult. it's very heavy. It's not easy to talk about these. I understand people don't want to talk about them. They don't want to hear about it. I get that. But you'd rather have the awkward, difficult conversations than the worst happening afterwards.
What are the signs that we should look out for?
Yeah.
For example, let's say someone's feeling suicidal or depressed. Obviously, the depression leads up to the suicide. So what signs should we be looking out for?
I would say, there's many common signs for a decline. We're looking for a decline in mental health where you're not feeling the same anymore. Something has changed with you. The reality is you're going to be feeling like, very demotivated. So if you go to school, if you go to work, or whatever environment you're in, you probably don't even feel like turning up. You don't feel like getting up in the morning. You don't feel like getting ready. You don't feel like brushing your teeth. You don't feel like doing all these things. And you feel like whatever it is that you're doing, you just want to be like that. Just like invisible, like just going in if you have to, and you've got no real want to achieve anything. Like there's no purpose there. In like before, maybe you might have been flourishing in certain environment. Now you just want to go unnoticed, and you could be wanting to avoid being around people, friends, certain environments where you were once very comfortable. Because of that, you now feel that you don't want to be around people. The reality is you're going to be overthinking everything, right? You're going to be, swimming and drowning in your thoughts because you haven't, it's difficult to talk to anybody about it. So you would be exhausted. Yeah. Physically, every day you'd be exhausted, but then you're going to struggle to sleep at night because it's going to keep you awake. So you can have sleeping troubles as well. You may eat less, or you may overeat to compensate. There's so many signs there, but just internally, you just don't feel right. You probably don't feel like doing much, and I said the thoughts are probably out of control that you're having. They're probably, you're probably feeling your thinking is very unhelpful. You're probably looking at everybody else and what they're doing potentially. You may be even thinking back to a time when you were happy, thinking, why can't I be like that? It's quite a lot of things. It's all different compared to each individual, but there's some common things there.
Obviously, the body tends to go the easy route. It's like if you're feeling rubbish, you just want to stay in bed. Whereas for you to overcome that, you're probably best off having some movement. Chemically, that is the best thing to do. So it's trying to go against your body's natural position, I guess, isn't it?
Totally.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I wanted to touch on men's suicide.
Yep.
From what I'm reading, it's very different from how women approach suicide if they did. Could you maybe talk a bit about that?
What I've seen from the experiences as well, it's like, obviously many people have tried to get help, and some have even got quite far down the line in terms of professional help, but for whatever reason they feel that this is the way forward for them in terms of, the reality is they don't want to do it, but they don't feel that they've got a choice because they'd rather not be here than feel the way that they do. And as I said, in terms of a family situation, the reality is that no one really wakes up and thinks that they're going to do this. It's a process, as you said before, that what actually leads to this, for somebody to want to do that, is that they've gone quite far down the line already, and that they're feeling like this, and that there's been a change there where all of a sudden they've made a decision that this is going to happen. And then the reality is they would have thought, well, this is how I'm going to do it. Yeah, this is going to be the means, this is going to be the time, this is going to be the place for it. And then obviously, are they going to, go forward and execute that? So I think whether it's a man or a woman, the process would be the same there. But in terms of a woman, obviously, it's really hard to answer this because where it comes to a woman, it comes to a man. Every time I hear it, you say, well, we had no idea that someone would do this.
The reason I asked that, from the stats, from what I've read, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, men tend to, there's a higher rate of suicide for men in comparison to women. However, it goes back to the previous conversation we were having, where men tend to be less open about their mental health.
Yeah.
So could they be getting to that point faster because they just haven't expressed those feelings?
I agree.
And that was really something, as I was reading the stats, that really
I think you know what you said there is, some of the times it's, well, pretty much all of the times, to be honest, attempted ones are a sign of reaching out for help. It's an attention, bringing attention to it, that I've got a problem. But with the stats, it's actually more women that attempt suicide than men.
Oh, really? Okay.
So there are things, like you said, where you're going to show someone through that there's a real problem here and we need to do something about it through the attempt, because the attempt may not be to take one's life, because obviously they've not done enough to do that, but the attempt is to show and scare the nearest and dearest, to say, I'm going to do something more maybe, or this is something you need to stand up and pay attention to this, potentially.
One of the things with that is sometimes people that attempt suicide, you get outsiders saying, oh, they're only doing it for attention, and putting a negative slant and saying, oh, they're selfish for doing it for attention. And that happens quite a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, you know what, that's a real difficult one, because even sometimes I've put stuff up, just something we all know about is Meghan Markle and her mental health, story, for example. Even when I put that on Instagram, people said, "Oh, she's doing that for attention," for example. And I said, "Look, right? I said we'll never know for anybody. We'll never know, right? But we have to take it like any judgment we have. We need to park that judgment. Yes, we all judge everybody, right? But at that point, it's not helpful. So we need to put it to one side. And even like as well, like you said, where you say someone might be making it up. They may have a history of making things up, potentially, where people think, oh, they're just doing what they do again. Is so and so doing what they do, or whatever it is. It can be really difficult, but we have to try our best to not judge them in that way, because the reality is, as you said, when the worst happens, everyone says, well, why didn't they say anything? Why didn't they reach out? But then they tried, maybe. And the thing is as well, you don't know. Someone may try to reach out and they don't get the response they want. Potentially they never reach out again. But the flip side to it is as well, if I've got a problem and I come to you two and I say, you know what, this is going on, right? You may care, but you don't know how to deal with it. Okay? You don't want to say the wrong thing, right? You don't want to make things worse. So, and I'm taking that as a rejection. And I've said, I've reached out to these guys. They should be able to help me. Why haven't they helped me? So there's that other side to it as well, where, we can't expect everyone to be, know about this. They can't be experts in this. We have to kind of be responsible as well. As you said, like when you're feeling a little bit low, you've got to try to do something to shake yourself out of it, in the sense that, like you said, if you're feeling a bit sluggish or a bit whatever it is, going out for a walk might help you to feel a little bit better, or something in the early stages. There's things you can do that's gonna, because the reality is, when when we're in our thoughts, we're feeling low, we're feeling like this, all we want to do is, just dwell in it and not fix it, because it's hard to fix. It's hard to work on yourself. It's uncomfortable.
The tough thing is, in the past, 100% it was a case of most of us didn't know about, if you came across it, how to deal with it. Whereas now, where we are discussing it, and this is why it's so important to discuss it, where it's like, okay, I don't know how to deal with it, but we need to do something. And I feel like that's been a big mind change from a lot of people because of that. I mean, you mentioned the Meghan Markle story that came out, and I had exactly the same feelings as yourself. It doesn't matter whether we don't know whether it's true or not. However, the worst case scenario, would we want to go there? Whereas the best case scenario, perhaps, she might be making it, but you don't want to get to the worst case. And that's with anybody
Yeah,
that's going through a mental health issue, isn't it?
totally agree with you. Who rules that rule of thumb? Who applies that to say, somebody is like this? We have to, as professionals as well. I know that you can't. There can't be that judgment there. You have to park that, as I said before. Put things to the side, and with our nearest and dearest, our friends or whatever it is, when we're trying to help, we have to put ourselves. It can't be about us. It has to be about them. What they need. But more often than not, it's about us, which is then where it comes to that, where we're judging them and saying, well, either they've maybe have done things in the past where we're bringing that up, or we're saying, well, this is the reason you're like this because you're not doing X, Y, and Z.
So another thing that comes out as well is once someone's actually committed suicide and it's gone and they've completed it, basically, the aftermath of family and friends. And in the past, I would have thought, okay, that person was selfish for committing suicide. And my thoughts have now completely changed, because you need to think, okay, what was the mindset of that person to be so desperate to commit suicide? How can people that are left look after themselves and their mental health? I don't think there's a fast and steady rule.
I think what you said there. There's the selfish element to it. That's always been there. But the reality is, if you look at somebody who is on the brink and then decides to cross that line of no return, what mental state are they in at that point to do that? And how ill are they? This is a disease we're talking about here, where anyone who's had any form of mental health related illness or struggles will tell you what they went through. And can you imagine what someone at the end of the road is like? How intensified it must be, and how exhausted they must be to think that this is the only way out of how I'm feeling. I'm escaping from how I'm feeling. And then look, this is what happens, because we talk about statistics all the time, but the reality is these are not numbers, these are people. And as you said, people's nearest and dearest, anyone who's come into contact with that person will be affected, no doubt about that. And how do they deal with that? How do they manage that moving forward? But obviously, for the people that are immediate and nearest and dearest, their life will never be the same again. There's no getting away from that. There will be trauma there for the rest of their lives. And what I've seen is that I've seen positive things from families afterwards, where I've had conversations with people where someone has taken their own life from their family, and they saying to me and others that we congratulating you for what you're doing, because we're supporting you in that, because that's our solace, and we want to do more things, because when they stop and think about it, there's nothing but an open wound there for them. There's nothing but pain there for them. So they rather get up and try and do something about other people. That's all they want to do. Everyone says, I don't want anyone to feel like I'm feeling, like going through what I'm feeling. So if we can stop anybody at that point, then that's what we need to try to do. And look, the reality is, we're not going to be able to stop someone from doing it. If they really want to do it, they're going to do it, right? There's no stopping anybody from that. The reality is that things are out of our control. We cannot control what other people do, but we can try to prevent it. We can make it less. I do believe that.
Now, we've all got mental health and we all need to look after it however we can. With yourself, you being a professional and dealing with people with mental health issues, how do you look after your own mental health?
Yeah, good question. Sometimes it's difficult, because you know what? Even after talking to you guys on this, there's an after effect to it. Talking about my own struggles, listening to other people talk about theirs, there's an energy exchange there. There's no doubt about that. And you have to, the more you do, the more you have to work on yourself. There's no getting away from that, because otherwise you're taking everything on yourself. So you need to have some outlet yourself. So I go running, I journal. This is the key thing for me, to journal, because I take out whatever's in here and put it on paper and I leave it there. It's for my own clarity. Because the other thing is, as well, as I said before, I do share a lot on social media. So a lot of stuff is in the public. So something is for me. This is for me. This is for my own clarity. I have affirmations to keep positive. Obviously, Sikhi helps me massively. Being around like-minded people, being around my kids is massive as well.
The journaling is really interesting, actually, because this is something you always hear about it: journal, journal, journal. And last week we did actually have a session for kids, and it was about writing. But one thing they picked up on was to get your kids to journal. Yeah. And I was like, that's such an interesting idea, because now children's mental health there's more awareness being created in regards to that. But this is something ourselves we didn't have to think about. We didn't think about it. Whereas now we are finding kids are more anxious. We as human beings are more anxious. Yeah. What do you put that down to? I know that's a tough question.
No. I mean, you know what? There's always that question where, was things worse before, or are they worse now? Because are more things being highlighted now, or were they still there before, or are we just hearing more about it now? It's a really interesting question.
That is an interesting
because
one, yeah.
everything is ready at this press of a button now. We've got everything. We know what's going on and everything. Whereas before, it took a little while to find out about things. Sometimes you didn't even find out about things. But the reality is, look, we are, we're connected to the wrong things. That's the reality around the things. Where we've got to a point where we're desperate to be disconnected from certain things now and be offline for a little while, because we realized that the things that we were using, we haven't been using them in the right way, to the point that we're bogged down by everything. Look, we don't need to be on top of everything, right? But we've got into this productive mindset that I must be an expert in everything I talk about. Like, for example, if you ask me a question on here, I'd have to hold my hands up and say, I don't know about that. It's okay, right? You don't expect everyone to know everything. We don't need to know every single bit of news that goes on in the world. Yes, we need to be clued up. We need to know the things that affect us, and have a understanding of things. We don't need to be up to date with to the minute, do we? And that's come to hit us, in the back, really, where we can't get away from this stuff. We're always connected to everything. We must be an expert in everything. When we have a conversation with someone, we must be up with the latest of everything. And we don't, and that makes us anxious because we don't know. We're like, oh my God, I don't know about this. I must find out about this. That makes me like this if I don't know about this. And what do I look like? And
it is funny, a lot of the podcasts that we've done, it always comes down to social media and the internet, doesn't it? You think that it made our life better, but I don't know. It's definitely had its toll, hasn't it?
That's why you're staying away from it, Bal.
Yeah, this is why I don't get involved. Just as we come to the end of the podcast, what advice would you give the listeners in regards to mental health or helping not only themselves but also others?
Before I answer that, because you said I had it go at social media, but social media has allowed me to meet so many amazing people, and it's allowed me to learn so much and change the course of my life as well. So I have to give it that credit as well. So I just went to put
that.
I'm on Gurpreet's side as well, because that's how I found him, and I follow all his posts. So I think it's wonderful.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you. And look.
I'll start doing it as well now, Gurpreet.
But look how. And this happened the other day as well. So we're going off topic. I will answer your question.
No, I'm going to re-ask you and then edit that back a bit into this video.
As Benji just said, she said, we've got connection on social media, but look how this brought us to this point of being able to record something to add value to other people's lives here. And the other day, I went to Bristol to do a talk in the Gurdwara there on mental health. That all came from a connection on social media. And there was a demand for it, and I went there, and that came from there. So, and this was just a person who messaged me, who's now become like my family friend.
Oh, is that how you become your family friend? Thanks for telling us.
Yeah, you guys are family friends. Yeah. But look, this is how it's made everyone connected in that way, in a special way as well. You can get to know somebody, through what they're all about. Yeah,
I was going to say, you've convinced me. I'll get onto my Facebook and my Instagram straight after this.
Yeah. Look, your podcast. Look, you want to get this out to as many people as you can, right?
Yeah,
is
so
true.
please
Yeah.
do join our Instagram page, Changing Suits. Thank you for that
Yeah.
intro
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. So yeah, go back to the question. You have to ask me again.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, I'll have to ask you again. I've forgotten what the question is now.
That's good. I didn't want to answer it. It was too difficult, so I tried to sidetrack you.
Well, I was trying to finish the podcast. I thought it was a nice way of doing it, but anyway, we've gone off topic there.
Yeah.
So, Gurpreet, what advice would you give our listeners in regards to looking after their own mental health and also helping those around them?
I think, you know what, the old example comes up of the safety measures on the aeroplane, right? You know, put your own
Oh yes.
on first, and then be able to help other people. That's definitely a thing where you do need to look after yourself, and not a selfish way, but reflect on yourself. Reflection is really important, to the point that, as I said, it can be hard at times because you don't want to deal with certain things about your character, about your internal, your spirit, and everything that goes on inside, your thoughts, everything. It can be really hard to deal with it and easier to ignore it. But the reality is, look, you're only doing yourself a disservice, and these things intensify and they come back stronger in waves. And then people are unable to work out exactly why they're feeling this way. So it's really important to work on yourself and look, be yourself. This is my own experience. For a long part of my life, I was not myself. I was unable to be my authentic self. I was around the wrong crowds where I was just, um, trying to be like everybody else. I didn't know who I was and everything like this. So be your authentic self. People will accept you for who you are. If those people that you're around do not accept you, then you will find yourself eventually gravitating away from them, and you will find the people that you're looking for, or they will find you, to be yourself. So this is really important, just to be yourself. Don't do something just because someone else is telling you to do it. Be yourself. Work on yourself, but allow um, the point of growth. So don't feel like, look, I'm 38 years old, right? And I think to myself, where I'm at now, I should have been there 10 years ago, wherever, right? Certain things I'm doing now, I'm like, why didn't I do that before? But life is a journey, right? Everything is given to you at the right time when you're able to handle it. Because then I'm thinking to myself, the things I'm doing now, yes, I may have been able to do them before, but my mindset was totally different then. I was a child, or I was like immature, I was like this, I was like that. I wouldn't have been able to do those things then. So don't punish yourself for not doing certain things, or this is the thing. Don't be your biggest critic. Try and be your biggest friend, best friend. Yeah, this is important. And self-love is taken the wrong way. It's not ego, right? It's not. We've grown up where, if we say that, we want to put ourselves first, or that we even like anything about ourselves, that's ego. We should not be doing that. And that's what people have told us our whole life, that stay away from this stuff. Make it all about other people. Yes, we should be serving other people, helping other people, but not at the detriment of our own mental health and our own, exhaustion, or whatever it is.
I was going to say, it's a beautiful message.
You've definitely, just from that statement, it's definitely a real self-reflection, because especially that last bit where you've said, as a community, we are told not to be your own cheerleader.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't be your own self-critic.
Mm-hmm.
Be your cheerleader. I love that.
But do you know what it is? When you get to a stage where you realize that working on yourself is important, and like you said, cheering yourself on, and acknowledging how you're able to move forward and move past things, you're actually able to do more and help more people, because they can realize, they can feel that energy from you. That whereas if you're not doing any of that and trying to do everything else, then it's not as effective, and you feel like drained to the point you don't want to do anything more. Whereas in the opposite, you feel like there's not enough time in the day. You can't get enough of what you're doing. It's amazing, like all the experiences that you're having, and how things are turning around. So it's the total opposite. And what you were saying there, about what you can do for other people is exactly the same thing. Look, this is the key thing here. When it comes to other people, the biggest thing is listening. It's huge. Listening is massive. We underestimate that. But just listening to someone, we don't actually have to have an answer for something or a solution for something all of the time. Yeah. Sometimes just listening to someone is at some point enough for them to make themselves a bit lighter inside, but also know that they've got somebody's attention there and somebody's care there and somebody's love there, that they can always go back to. That it's important, because the thing is, anybody who's ever had any issue, and had it internalized, the biggest fear is the first point they tell somebody about something, because they've overthought it to the point that they're totally scared that they're never going to say anything, and it's a really big thing inside. And somebody could say to them, "I felt like that before as well," and then that's a huge weight off their shoulder straight away, where you've just sat back and you've just allowed them. Your body language has been totally open. Your attention has been there, where they've said, they can acknowledge that you're present there with them. That right now, in this moment, um, like I'm with you guys, this is the most important thing right now, because I'm present here with you guys, right? So when that person is telling you how they're feeling or whatever it is that they're saying, and you're listening to them, you are there with them in that present moment and nowhere else, and they will feel that it matters to them. And look, you can say to them, look, you may not be able to help them fully. You may not be able to solve whatever it is that's going on, but even if you say to them that, look, it matters to me, yeah, what you're going through, it matters to me, right? I care. I might, whether you can help, if you can help them, fantastic. If you can help them, then their problem is your problem, yeah. If you've got the capacity to help them, right? If you haven't, then that's okay as well, right? You don't have to, might not be skilled in it, you might not, whatever it is. But if you're able to say to them, well, let's look into this together, right? Or, let's look at these options potentially, like for the solution, depending on how you're feeling, what you're thinking, da 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 da. Let's get some form of help for you, whatever that looks like. And let's not say to them, oh, well, let's try this, and then that's it. Right? Let's try this. Okay, if this doesn't work, let's give that a go, or let's try something else. There's always something that we can try, but don't blame someone. Don't say to them, look, this is because this reason. Like, the biggest thing, this is the last thing I want to say on this one, is that somebody at that point is potentially broken already. Yeah. So, on the outside, when we get like a wound or whatever, we can physically see that it heals up. Yeah, there's an interaction and we can see it physically. Internally, we cannot see someone's internal, what is going on there with them. And the reality is, someone's spirit who's broken is much harder to repair than a healing on the outside. So somebody may be at a point where their spirit might be totally broken or on the verge of that. You doing that and you blaming them or putting pressure on them, arguing with them, saying, whatever it is that you're going to be doing, you could break their spirit even more, because that person is already feeling really bad. They're feeling like, they're a burden. They're feeling guilty. They're feeling all of these things. The last thing we want to do is make someone feel worse.
And on that point, Gurpreet, it's been an absolute pleasure having you.
Thank you, guys.
We've learnt so much, and the listeners, I'm sure, would have learnt so much. The whole point of this podcast has been to raise awareness, and there's been so many aspects that we've discussed today. So please do join Gurpreet's Instagram page, Sikh Dad, and continue looking and listening to his journey into mental health. On that point, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.